walk to me. And so that was hugely inspiring. And then our team gets together a couple of weeks later. We're at Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are excited to launch our channel, The Chronic Condition Conquerors. If you or someone you love is battling a chronic condition, lupus, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, anything that is something that doctors have said is going to be with you indefinitely and is going to affect the quality of life that you can live. Well, this channel is for you. My name is Judy Tuzin, and I have been conquering lupus and mixed connective tissue disease for the past 21 years. And I am joined by my lupus warrior sister, Sabrina Franco. Sabrina.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Like Judy said, I'm Sabrina Franco, and I have just been diagnosed with lupus recently in July of 2020. And so I'm glad to be here with Judy.
And so we felt it was super important to be able to just have real conversations with each other and with other people with the hopes of being able to educate, encourage, and empower fellow conquerors and the people who love them to live their best lives. And it wouldn't make sense for us to start this channel, start these conversations without really taking a moment to kind of share our story, how Sabrina and I even came to feeling compelled to start this channel together and have these conversations with others. And so, as I shared, I was diagnosed with lupus back in 1999. I was 18 years old and heading off to college, and just remember waking up and my hands feeling fat and stiff and swollen. And I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't really have time to be too concerned, but it kept happening. And so I went to see my pediatrician because I was, yes, still seeing my pediatrician. And I remember him referring me, one, just to an adult doctor, because at that point I needed a primary care physician, and also sending me to hospital for special surgery, which is based in New York City. I was living in the city at the time with my sister, again, getting ready to go to school. And I met a doctor by the name of Dr. Marmer. And his first question to me was, does anybody in your family have lupus? And at that time, I could only think of, my dad, who I didn't meet him until I was 15. And so I really didn't understand much about the condition or what it meant or how it impacted him, but I knew enough to know that he had lupus. And so Dr. Marmer diagnosed me with lupus at the time, and I stopped seeing him because he wasn't able to tell me how to cure it, how to get rid of it. And so I thought he was a quack. And so spent the next 4, 5, maybe even 6 years going to different rheumatologists, trying to really understand what this lupus thing was, and more importantly, how to get rid of it. And because none of them could tell me how to get rid of it, I honestly didn't take care of it. I didn't manage it. At that point, again, it was really in my hands, and I could pretty much do everything else I wanted or needed to do. And so essentially neglected myself and neglected it. It wasn't until I want to say probably 2000, maybe 7, that I honestly started to better understand what I was dealing with. Finally found a doctor that I could listen to and respect and believe in, and realized that it wasn't something that was going to be quote unquote cured. It was something that had to be managed and monitored. At that point, my hands had already started to become deformed. I had been hospitalized once or twice for trying to get off of my steroids. At that point, I used to call it Predi, because prednisone was the only thing that met any needs that I had and got rid of the pain and allowed me to walk. And so I figured out how to better take care of it. And then in 2015, I made a big move, decided to leave New York, had an opportunity to work with an organization based in Texas, and packed up my car, got rid of all my furniture, and moved across country by myself, feeling really confident that this was a new opportunity, a new chapter, and that, again, I had this condition, but it wasn't going to limit or define what I was able to do. I had been experiencing some breathing problems leading up to that, and started seeing an ENT in New York to try to get to the bottom of it. And it wasn't until I saw a pulmonologist in Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, that I had ever, for the first time, received a prognosis. I had known for a long time that over time, lupus and mixed connective tissue disease could lead to deformities, and was experiencing them, as you can see in my hands. I had already had hand surgeries, and so understood that things could get more debilitating over time, but never thought about it impacting like my longevity, my life. And so on December 4th, 2015, a pulmonologist looked at me and said that I might not make it to my 40th birthday. At that point, he had said I was 34 going on 35. And he said that within 3 to 5 years, I might steadily decline and my lungs would not be able to support me and that I wouldn't be here. I was devastated for a moment. I'm not one to necessarily always talk about my health condition because I feel like it already takes so much from me. And so I remember texting my sister and saying to her, I don't want to talk about it. This is what the doctors are saying. Just pray, just pray. Got in my car, cried a little bit, went right to work, finished the day. I had already 2 weeks before that committed to trying the whole vegan thing that the people who love me, who also know that I love food, had been trying to encourage me to consider. And so I had already made up in my mind that I was going to try vegan Dr. Sebi style. And so when I got that prognosis from the doctor, I thought to myself, God is dramatic. God loves for things to get a whole lot harder before they get better. And so jumped all the way in 2016, all the way in, vegan that entire year, gave up everything that I love in terms of food, with the hopes of being able to do my part, right? Cure myself of this condition, hearing that so many other people had been able to like get healthy, just from being able to change their diet and their lifestyle. Even went to Honduras to the Usha Healing Village, and was sick the whole time. And so spent the entire year being a vegan, got a little bit better, but not necessarily a whole lot better. And so spent then 2017 and 2018 exploring different paths and opportunities when it comes to health, and finally found something called the plant paradox by Dr. Gundry that talks a lot about lectins and what lectins can do to the body and for people with autoimmune conditions. And so started that and was feeling better by June of 2018. And then in August of 2018, got another CAT scan of my lungs that showed progressive scarring and was advised to restart my prednisone. I'd been able to get off in June for the first time in almost 20 years. And then by August had to get back on. And so it was another almost like setback, pretty hard, devastating setback. And again, not being one who loves to talk or have to call people who I love and tell them, here's what's going on, I decided to just make a Facebook post. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, right? You don't like to talk. How you going on Facebook? It felt easier. It felt easier to just have one conversation with everybody who knows and loves me and let them know what I was experiencing, as opposed to having separate conversations with all my friends and all my family. And so shared that message. But I think the most important thing that came out of that message for me was the idea that tomorrow isn't promised to anybody. It was very sobering and a really powerful reminder that, like, at the end of the day, we don't get to choose. I don't get to choose what happens, what I experience, but I absolutely get to choose how I live, and how I respond. And so share that message. And I think the second biggest blessing that came out of sharing that message was when Sabrina reached out to me a couple of months later to make a really special offer to support me as I was on my health journey. Sabrina, what will you share with folks how you reached out based on that?
Yes, well, Judy and I worked for the same organization down here in Texas when she was living in the Rio Grande Valley, and we were having our Christmas social in Austin. And I remember just having a sense of like, just a warmth, right? Just every time I talked to her and I would tell her, Judy, you just calm me. Every time I'm able to speak to you, you calm, like myself. And so since 2014, I started running the Rock and Roll Marathon in San Antonio. And the reason I started that was because I was suffering from anxiety. As a school principal, I would get a lot of anxiety, and I just needed that sense of like release And so my friend Elisa Pulido, she encouraged me to start walking. And then I started jogging and then eventually running. And the first couple of races, I remember running behind this one person who was wearing a t-shirt that says, "I run for those that can't." Right. And so from that point forward, I knew that God had gifted me with the ability to run. And so I knew that I had to pay it forward. Right. That's always been my philosophy, to pay it forward. And my friend, she posted right before the race, she says, "I'm running and dedicating this race to my mother who died of cancer." Right. And so every year I started dedicating a race to someone I truly admired and loved. And because they couldn't do it, I wanted to do it for them. So that year in the dining room, I decided to dedicate my race to Judy, because I knew that, she started being vulnerable and shared her story with us. And so I knew that that year was going to be dedicated to her. And so that's why I decided to run for you, Judy.
And I mean, of course I said yes. I remember when you asked, right? We were at our training and I was like, sure, yes, absolutely. Then I gave you the little starfish, right? So that you could carry that with you. And I just remember as you raced that December, feeling like I was there with you, right? Like as you went through every mile, every bit of the distance, I would get pictures and I would get signs and symbols from you along the way. And it was I don't know. I think the only way that I can describe it, it was like heart filling, right? Like inspiring and heart filling to think that you had done all the training. You were the one who was out there, and yet you thought enough of me, of the condition to dedicate the walk to me. And so that was hugely inspiring. And then our team gets together a couple of weeks later. We're at our fellow teammates' house in that same month. And then we're talking about the race, right? I remember you were there and a couple of other people who also have done half marathons and marathons are there. And you're talking about the fact that everybody runs. And I don't think I understood it. What did you say again? Tell us again.
I said, just being there at the race, it made me realize that people with all shapes and sizes, with all different abilities, either walk or run or jog or push each other in, like there's people that are called the angel wings, and these ladies and gentlemen that push people that are in wheelchairs, right? And so that just inspires me so much to encourage people that they can do it, right? The body will do what the mind tells it to do, and especially if it's driven by the heart. And so I push that, and I remember telling you, Judy, you can do it. You can do it. You can walk. And so that's why I decided like to share that with you, because I felt so compelled that I don't know, maybe it was God, and you and I talk about that, right? That our connection is beyond divine, right? Like it was meant to happen.
It really was. Like I remember in hindsight, like I don't know why I didn't know that you can walk these things, or that like people actually are pushed sometimes, right? Like that there are people in wheelchairs who are not able to walk for themselves necessarily, but that they have people who love them, who are out there with them on the path, right? And doing the race. And so I think honestly, it was that conversation and like better understanding that like it is not about your physical ability necessarily. And it's not about your size or your age. Like those are not the things that determine or dictate if you can do one of these walks or these runs. And so I remember thinking to myself, okay, so it is 2018. I got this bad report a few months ago in terms of my lungs. But I have 2 more years, right, before I would be 40, before this pulmonologist prognosis would be true. And so I remember in that moment then making the decision, well, if anybody can do it, right, if anybody can go there, if I can walk and I don't have to run, then I'm gonna go for it. I'm going to walk a half marathon for my 40th birthday, right? And if death is really coming, then it's gonna have to catch me living. It'll catch me walking. I won't be sitting around waiting for it to do what it is hoping to do. And so that was life-changing for me. That conversation, that realization was the exact education, encouragement, empowerment that I needed, Sabrina, to be able to make a decision for myself and like to really commit my heart and my mind and my body to going after it. And so I remember with 2 years to go, looking at 2019 and saying, well, if I can get to a 10K in 2019, then that's about half the distance to a half marathon for 2020. And I did my very first walk on my birthday, December 29th, 2018, and could barely do like a mile and a half. I went to Cunningham Park, not far from me, and like did my best. It was like maybe 1.5 miles, maybe 2 in like 40 something minutes. And was like, okay, well, we're out here, right? This is day one. This is day one, part one, step one. And then went into 2019 and was able to do my first lupus walk, right? To have struggled with the condition for almost 20 years at that point and have never done one of the walks and never been part of the groups was crazy to me. And so I remember signing up for that, which was scheduled for May, and being able to do that with my sisters and my brother and friends and just people supporting and raising over $2,000 for the Lupus Foundation by doing that walk, which was so important because it is a cruel condition. It is an uncertain condition, right? People don't really understand it, and no two people experience it the same way. And the drugs that work for me might not work for somebody else. And so it's just, it is so big and so cruel and so ugly. And so to be able to do that was huge. And then to be able to do a 10K for the first time in April and like get those 6 miles in by myself, no less, because I couldn't go to Texas and do it with my people who had said that they wanted to be a part of it. And they got rained out. And I think you had even signed up for it, right?
Yep, I had.
You and Michelle and maybe even Lisa. And not being able to do it because of the weather, and then my trip being canceled. And so woke up and was like, okay, well, I can track myself. And so literally April 7th, just walked the 6 miles. And so that was like a game-changing moment, because it was like, okay, if I can get up and do this 6 miles, and it's only April, then I've got to be able to continue to push myself and then make it a year and a half from now for the half marathon. I don't think there were any races, though, in 2019 that were anywhere near as special as the race that we were able to do on December 7th, San Antonio Rock and Roll. I shared with you in July that I was going to go walk it, right? You walked it for me in 2018. I'm going to go and walk it for myself in 2019. And then you shared with me your plans, Sabrina, you and your husband. What did you all decide?
We decided, we were already scheduled to do the half marathon on Sunday, on December the 8th. So we decided to have a little change of our agenda. We decided to do the race with you on Saturday, and we signed up for the 10K. We decided to fly or drive in a day early so that we could walk the race with you. And it was just such a blessing to see you, experience it with you. And my husband got a chance to record some of it, and and we go back and we still look at the video, and we just are so happy. And it just filled our bucket just to be there with you. Just that motivation that you had, and that sparkle that you had in your eye, and that determination to get through it. And so that was such a blessing to be able to experience that with you.
I think the blessing, like, it's amazing to hear you all say that it was a blessing for you all. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't think you have any idea what it was for me to be able to do that with you and Jorge. It was surreal, right? It was almost like out of body surreal, because the year before I wasn't, right? I wasn't able to physically be there with you. You have a little starfish. Thank God for a little starfish. But I think, honestly, like, if you hadn't made the offer to dedicate it to me the year before, then there isn't, I can't imagine a world in which I would have been walking it with you in 2019. And to have Jorge there pretty much like documenting the whole thing was priceless. And then I think even more beautiful than that was the opportunity to be able to sit with you and your friends who had turned you on to running, right? tell me again how that even got started, because you weren't running your whole life, right? Like,
No. Yeah,
running.
no, I had never been an athlete. I was in band, and I mean, band members are athletes, right? But physically running, no, I never done that in my life. But I was getting a lot of anxiety attacks as a first couple of years as a principal. And so my friend had moved to Arkansas, and her husband, who works for Sam's, he decided to start running because of like, trying to release stress and things like that, or manage stress. And she started doing it as well. And she encouraged me to do it. She said, Sabrina, you just need to get out there and walk. And so I was getting, horrible anxiety attacks. And one morning in the summer, I remember waking up and just deciding, you know what, I'm putting on my running shoes, go to the park. Every day I would start crying, walking, crying, walking, crying, but it was like a purging of my soul, right? Like just needed to let everything out. And in August, this was back in July, in August, one of my colleagues' husband was diagnosed with cancer, and they decided to do a 5K run for him. Judy, it took me almost an hour to do the 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And I remember that my husband George or Jorge had to come back for me and encourage me and push me like, you can do this, you can do this, you can finish. And I remember feeling so like just accomplished because I had never done the 3 miles in my life, right? And I think the farthest I had walked was 1.5 miles when I was like walking in the park. And so from that point forward, I knew like, you know what, I can do this, I can walk. And I remember sharing that with my friend, Elisa Pulido, and she says, you know what, friend, I'm going to sign you up for the rock and roll. And I said, what do you mean? And she goes, yeah, we do this race in San Antonio. It's really cool. It's over 25,000 runners, people of all ages, sizes, shapes, everything. Exactly what I told you, she told me. I'm like, you're crazy. There's no way I can do 13.1 miles. She's like, yes, you can. I'm going to send you my training schedule, and I'm going to keep up with you, and I'm going to coach you through it. Mind you, she's in Arkansas, I'm in Texas. And so there was no like Zoom and, Teams pages that we could like log in. Everything was done by phone and email. And so by text. And so she decided, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I did my first race in 2014. I finished, and by May actually of that spring of 2015, I had done 7. I completed 7 half marathons in those 4 months. And so I was hooked. I shared with Judy, I became addicted. And every year since then, I've been doing the rock and roll and some other races. I've done in the Galveston, I did the Divas run, which is so much fun. So all sorts of races. Running became part of my life. Mind you, I'm not a fast runner. I'm not about speed. I'm about distance, endurance, strength. And so I just feel so accomplished when I get to do those races because it's something that I never thought I could do. And I just felt so fortunate that God gave me the ability to do it. Right. And so it just became part of me, of who I am.
And because it became part of you through your friend, right, that you were able to share it with me. And so I remember being able to meet her and meet her husband on that day and be able to like thank you and thank Jorge and thank them because of the power of their encouragement, right? Like had her husband not encouraged her, then she wouldn't have been able to encourage you, and you wouldn't have been able to encourage me. And who knows who I will encourage, but I'm encouraging everybody, right? Everybody, right? Walk, right? Live your best life. Do not be limited by whatever chronic condition you are conquering, because you're conquerors. We're conquerors. And so I think that walk that December was everything to me. And that conversation with your friend, her husband, and you and Jorge was everything to me, because I was able to, I think it's really rare when we have an opportunity to thank the people in our lives who helped to make a difference in our lives. It's not every day that we have a chance to say thank you. So that was super special. And it also made me feel like, yes, right, I'm halfway there, right? Like I can do this half marathon in December 2020. Mind you, I don't know if you remember, but the original plan was to do it in Portugal, right? Every year, at the end of the year, I found this race. They do it the last Saturday in December. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big. I'm going to be 40. So I'm going to go. I'm going to train. I'm going to go to Portugal. I'm going to do my half marathon there. And then 2020 sets in. And then COVID sets in and
Yep.
changes the whole world, and turns it upside down. And while we're conquering, we're also like very mindful of like the realities. And so I remember my doctor called and was like, "Yeah, Judy, you are very high risk, and you need to stay home. Like you actually don't need to be out there in the streets of New
Mhm.
York until we better understand what's happening with this virus." And like it was real. I mean, New York was like the
Mhm.
epicenter, and people were dying by the hundreds every day. Sadly, one of my closest friends in the world lost her mom. My mom lost her cousin, and so it wasn't a conspiracy theory to me in New York. It was a very real thing to be mindful of. And so I remember just not being able to walk and not being able to train for a long time throughout this year, and almost starting to even think that it wasn't going to happen. I knew for sure Portugal was out of the question. I couldn't even find the race anymore. By the time we hit like May, I couldn't even find it. So I knew that was no longer a possibility. And then just not being able to walk for with any consistency or any real uh, deliberateness, it was
Mhm.
starting to feel like it was impossible. Um, and then June comes, and I'm no longer working right with our organization, but we're definitely still in touch. And then I learned through some of our close friends, Sabrina's not feeling so well. And I'm like, okay, well, what's up with Sabrina? And I remember reaching out to you and hearing about your recent journey and your recent struggle. Um, will you share what that was like for you this summer?
Yes, definitely. So I would, in the whole month of June, I would go out and do my daily routine, right? Jog 3 to 4 miles a day. I even started um, buying a bike. I bought a bike because I would come home after my jog and I would tell my husband, I'm not doing so well. I feel so tired even after my jog, which is not normal. And I would tell him, something's not right. And something's not right. And so I ended up buying a bike because I said, well, maybe if I do the bike, right, it's going to feel different. And it didn't feel different. I had the bike for about a week because I bought it towards the end of June. Beginning of July, I woke up one morning, I had my eyes super swollen, shut, like I had been like in a bar fight. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I'm having a severe allergic reaction to something. I thought it was the Sahara dust that had just blown into the Rio Grande Valley. So I was like that about for 3 or 4 days, and it wouldn't go away. And then all of a sudden, I was having a hard time eating because my stomach started to get bloated, and I felt like I couldn't eat. And I was like that for about another 3 or 4 days. So I decided to go to see my general practitioner because by then I was already throwing up.
Yeah.
I started to get a little bit of a fever and I wasn't sleeping through the night. And so I went to her and she told me that something was definitely up. She couldn't tell me exactly what it was, but I looked like if I was like 6, 7, 8 months pregnant and I couldn't hold anything in. So she says, something's wrong. I'm going to schedule a sonogram. I want to see your kidneys. I want to see your liver. I want to see your whole abdomen area. And so because of the COVID, I had gone to her around July the 7th or the 8th around there. And I was not going to have my sonogram till July 15th. And I ended up not making it to July 15th to the sonogram because I ended up in the emergency room on July 10th, July 9th, actually. Um, I was like, literally, my body was full of poison. I didn't know that at the time, but I was so swollen. I normally weigh 160 pounds around there. I was weighing close to 197 pounds. That's how much fluid I had in my body. And I could not walk. I could not speak. People would call me, text me. I could not respond because my brain was not functioning well. And the doctor at the emergency room says you need to see a specialist in the morning because your liver is enlarged. You might have fatty liver disease. And I'm like, okay, what is that? So I started researching that. Went back to my general practitioner. This was on a Friday. Went back on a Monday, early morning. She was super, she saw my blood work. She was nervous. I could tell in her voice she was nervous because my counts were horrible. I had a lot of ammonia. I had a lot of issues going on. And so she says, we need to get you to a liver specialist tomorrow. tomorrow. She didn't say, it can wait. She says, tomorrow, you need to see, I'm going to try my best to get you to a liver specialist tomorrow. If you don't get a call by 4 o'clock this afternoon, you call me and I will get you somebody by tomorrow, because she was so worried that I was not going to make it. And she was worried about the hospitals, right? There was no room. And so thank God she did get me an appointment first thing in the morning. I was able to see my liver specialist, Dr. Wendorf, who I owe my life to, because he's the one who pushed and gathered the whole team together once he discovered what he discovered, right? Which he knew something was wrong with my liver, but he always felt that it was because of my blood work, that it was autoimmune hepatitis. That's what his first theory was, right? He's like, I think the liver is a bystander to something else. I don't think that there's something really wrong with your liver. I think it's a bystander to another issue, which I believe has to do with some type of autoimmune.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no. First thing that came to my mind was I have lupus, because my mother has suffered with lupus for over 20 years. And you know how they say that lupus is hereditary or can be hereditary. Yeah. And so I had it in my mind. I'm like, I know I have lupus. Something is wrong. And so sure enough, on July 23rd, I went to my rheumatologist, which I already had seen back in 2018, because my glands, my lymph nodes were getting swollen and I had arthritis. And so she had determined that, yes, I might have a slight of Sjogren syndrome kind of trying to show up, a little bit of arthritis trying to show up, but lupus was not in the picture back then.
Yeah.
So when my liver specialist told me, he goes, yeah, I can see the records of 2018, but what was trying to knock at the door has really made its presence today.
Yeah.
He goes, you have something. And so sure enough, he called her, they got together, they studied my records and my blood work. And sure enough, in July 23rd, my 48th birthday, I received a birthday call from my rheumatologist.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. She's like, you have SLE and you have mixed connective tissue disease. So I was devastated. And all my life I had been trying to prevent, my dad had heart issues, my mom had lupus, my grandfather had cancer. I was always trying to work towards preventive care, right? And working hard at my diet, at my physical exercises, so that I wouldn't have to be, suffering from some of those diseases. And so I went into a very dark place because she told me, first thing she told me, stay away from the sun, stay away from people right now, especially because of COVID.
Sure.
And I'm such a social person that I could not even fathom what that would feel like, right? And I was just like, oh my gosh, being on the sun, that's my life now. I run and I jog and I walk and I go fishing with my husband. And, I just felt, devastated. So I didn't speak to a lot of people about the condition for a long time. For about 2 weeks, I was just in my bedroom. I couldn't walk, couldn't talk, because was not going to get my meds. On July 23rd was the diagnosis, but I was not going to get my meds until after August the 6th. And so it was just I felt like those 2 weeks felt so long.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't eat, I couldn't speak. I was constantly vomiting because I had so much ammonia in my body. So I needed to clean out my system first.
Yeah.
And it was just a horrible experience, Judy. I felt like and then my eyes, the worst thing was that my eyeballs were swollen. They were inflamed. I had blisters in my eyes. I had never seen that before. And so it was such a tough journey that I was in a very dark place. And that's when you reached out to me. And I remember you sending me a video, a song, right? That God's there for me, always. And it's called The Blessing, right? And so I remember thinking to myself, you of such little faith, girl, you need to push yourself. And you know that this is not going to make who you are. Lupus, you might have lupus, like the saying goes, but lupus does not have me.
Yes.
And there was a little switch that went off and said, you know what? It's true. God is for me. I'm not going to let this little diagnosis, take away all the faith that I have in our Lord. And so I decided I'm going to start living. And that's when you and I had our first Zoom call.
Yes.
And we started sharing and talking. You shared the diet with me and you started talking to me and encouraging me, just like when I encouraged you about the walking. That was the same thing that I felt that I needed to hear in the moment, right? so that I could change my life and change my mindset and change how I was viewing my lupus diagnosis. And so thank you for that.
Oh, girl, please. Like that thing, I still remember hearing you say, I have lupus and mixed connective tissue disease. And I was like, who
Yeah.
does that? Like, who does that? In what world, right, does the one human, like if I have to pick of all the humans who inspire me and encourage me and really have helped me in this like 20, 21 years, I have to put you first because of the gift that you gave me with one, the dedication, and then two, the way that that empowered me and inspired me to get up and get after it myself. And so to 6 months later, have the conversation where the one person who has been all of that for me is now facing the very same, I mean, like exact diagnosis, right? Different symptoms, right? Showing up totally differently in our bodies, but to be facing the same thing, I was like, there's something so much bigger, right? And so this idea of chronic condition conquerors, I've been thinking about it for so long and quite honestly, just so afraid because like, I don't love this video thing and I don't love this whole social media thing. Sincerely, I do not. But it just feels so much bigger. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. I think there is a world of people every single year, 16,000 plus people are diagnosed with lupus. 16,000, that's 16,000 people who absolutely need to know that the diagnosis does not define who you are. That's 16,000 people who need to understand that you can still live your best life, even if you have to make some modifications. I can't open every jar. I just can't. So I ask my brothers, right? Or like, honestly, there are times when I'm in the supermarket and before I leave, I'm like, please open this so that it's open when I get home, right? So your life may be different, but it does not have to be done. And I think that is why this conversation, that is why Conquerors is so important to me, because you have like chronic conditions that people feel like at the end of the day, that's it, right? Their life is over, that they're going to be immediately disabled or on disability, and that they can no longer even think about having children or being in relationships or paying their own bills or working and all the things that start to run through your mind when you get a diagnosis. And like that dark place you described, Sabrina, is a real place. It's a real place and it's a real dark place. And you can get stuck there, right? You can get stuck there. I can get stuck there. And so to be able to be in conversation and in community with someone like you is life-changing for me. I remember speaking to you and thinking, this is terrible. I'm angry. This is frustrating. And the story's not over yet, right? So she has lupus. Okay. All right. Well, let's get to conquering. Started training again for my race, staying in conversation and communication with you. I feel so blessed, right? Ended up in school and I have a classmate, his name is Chris, and every week he started doing these Nike run challenges. Not a whole lot, get out there and do 10 miles, get out there and do 11 miles. And I had to tell him, I was like, you don't even understand how timely this has been for me, because it pushed me to get back out there and just keep walking and keep walking. And then on December 7th, of this year, Facebook, because Facebook is awesome with this, throws up the little reminder, and it's our picture from our walk last December. And that just pushed me to be like, you know what? I'm here for it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this walk. I'm going to get up. I'm going to walk 13.1 miles by hook or by crook. And I'm going to do it because I committed to myself that I was going to do it 2 years ago and that I would see 40 fit and free. And I reposted, right? I reshared our picture and I was like, I'm still doing it. And what happened when you saw that picture?
Yeah, so I had not, I think the most I had walked was 1 mile, 1.5 miles, because my body was just not having it. And I was mentally not prepared, right? I was just still low. My husband ended up buying us a new treadmill so I could do it at home, and he was trying to motivate me as much as possible and I couldn't. But then I saw your post and I said, you know what? If she's gonna do the half marathon, the half marathon, I'm gonna do the 10K. Our tables have turned.
In a year, in 1 year.
Yes, I'm gonna force myself and challenge myself to do a 10K. I was scared, Judy. I was really scared because one, I was afraid of the sun. Right. I didn't want to do the 6 miles on the treadmill because that's gonna be like a long journey.
Yeah.
But my husband then says, you know what? If she has a schedule, because you by then you had sent us a schedule and you were gonna tell us like where you were. He goes, Sabrina, I was thinking, he goes, we can do a schedule. He goes, we can go and find places to go walk and you can do your 6 miles. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I was still like, he doesn't know how scared I was that morning because in my mind, I was linking my symptoms, my illness, my lupus being triggered by the sun because I had spent the whole month of June in the sun. And so I said, you know what? God has a plan. God's going to help me through this. I took my little can of sunblock and I sprayed myself every like 30 minutes and I wore my long sleeves and I was pushing, I was encouraging you. Like my mind was set on you finishing. So therefore I was not as afraid for myself. So
Yep.
that helped. Right. And I kept on sending you like little encouragement, motivation.
Yes.
And little like, where are you? Like, and then everybody that was running with you was sending like this group chat, right? Was telling us what you were doing. And so George and I were like, gosh, she's already done 2 miles. Oh my gosh, or two laps, right? Or 2 legs. And we're just like super happy for you. So that kept my mind set on you. And by the time I knew I had finished my 6 miles.
Yes.
I did it. So that was super helpful. And I think, like you said, like the sisters, like the sisterhood, right? The story's not finished and we were pushing each other.
Yeah.
You were doing 13.1, I was doing my 6.2, and we did it. We accomplished it.
Yes, we did. And like your messages, even that day, I know you talk about the messages. You sent BioFreeze, you sent medals, you sent Fitbits, you sent I'm like, Sabrina, don't send me anything else. You have given me more than I could ever thank you for and repay you for. And so we did it, right? December 20th, right? 9 days before my 40th birthday, we got up and we got out there and you conquered your fear of the sun. Yeah. And conquered the 6 miles and I conquered that half marathon in ways that I think prove that healed is a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Like the idea of being healthy and strong and vibrant and able is a mindset. It doesn't mean that there aren't pains and that there aren't hard days and there aren't challenges, but I think you said it best a little bit ago when you were like, the body will do what the mind tells it to and what the mind believes it can. And like nobody in the universe could have looked at me 2 years ago and told me that I would have walked a half marathon. And without steroids, I have not been on my prednisone since July. So to be steroid free for real this time in 21 years and walk a half marathon, I have to believe in the power of the conqueror's mindset and the power of the conquering spirit. And so this is our story, right? This is how we have come together, how we have come to even have this conversation and be committed to building a community of conquerors. But I know that this is just two of thousands and thousands and thousands of stories of people who are every day waking up and making the choice to conquer whatever chronic condition that they're facing. And so it is my hope, it is our hope that anybody who watches this would be inspired, be encouraged, be empowered, join our community, be a part of the conversation. We would love to have you share your story, right? What condition are you conquering every day? What was your diagnosis? What was that process like? What was your dark place like? How have you overcome? How do you overcome every day? We would want to be in community with you so that together we can prove that we may have these conditions, but they don't have us. We may deal with them, but they don't define our destiny. They don't define how we live. That yes, life is giving and living is a choice, and we choose to live. We choose to live life to the fullest. And at the end of the day, we don't get to choose what challenges or mountains we face. But I strongly believe that there's a quote that says that we were assigned this mountain to prove to others that it can be moved. And Sabrina has proved to me, you, Sabrina, have proved to me in so many ways that mountains can be moved. And I trust that, like, I am proving every day that mountains can be moved, and that together, the more that we collectively share our stories of conquering, that the 16,000 people who will be diagnosed this year and the 16,000 people who will be diagnosed the year after that, they won't stay in the dark place. They won't give in to the condition. They won't give in to the diagnosis, that they would commit to conquering, just like we have made a commitment to doing. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of our story and our journey. If anything in our conversation inspired you, resonated with you, please share the video. More importantly, you'll see our email address information. If you yourself are a chronic condition conqueror, or you know somebody who is, we would love to hear from them. We would love to have them be a part of our conversation and share their story with others and be a part of our community of conquerors. Thank you so much. Conquer on, Conquerors.
Yes, and happy birthday, Judy.
Oh, yay! 40 today.
Yay.
Thank you.